they first saw it, it didn't look so very different from any other port. Then the heavy odor swept down from the paddy fields and met them at the docks, and they knew that this was a different land. To the men of the 25th Brigade, to the men from Moncton, Mont-Joli, Moose Jaw, and Vancouver, Korea was no longer a name. It was a country of earth and sky, and trucks and trains. A country of contradictions, of fierce pride and desperate poverty, of inventive genius and primitive methods. In the land where the mechanical printing machine was born, the farmers still sow their crops by hand. Their rice was once the finest in the world, and they grew enough to sell to other Asian peoples. Now there isn't enough to feed their own. But they will endure. After 40 years of foreign domination, they have learned to live with misery and hardship without surrendering their dignity. The receding war has given them back their land. Slowly, they are returning. The villages behind the front are coming back to life, and the squeak of the wagons is again heard along the dusty roads. The beasts of burden have outlived the beasts of war. Seoul, once a city of 2 million, was reduced to a pile of splinters, bricks, and roofless walls. Now they are returning to the rubble, trying to fit the jigsaw back together, trying to recover the Seoul they knew before June 1950. The war in Korea has been a bitter experience to all the allies of the Republic of Korea. The U.S. and Korean armies who bore the burden of the early reverses finally drove the invaders out, only to be confronted by a new and greater enemy, the fresh troops of Communist China. Ground gained at a staggering cost of lives had to be fought for again, usually under conditions that would sap the strength and will of lesser men. But this time, they were not alone. The guns of 14 other members of the United Nations had joined the battle, and Canadian infantry and artillery spoke out in answer to communist aggression. Gradually, the invader was pushed back behind the 38th parallel, and talk of peace was heard as Red and UN negotiators met at Kaesong and later at Panmunjom. In the first flush of hope that accompanied the truce talks, the machines of war came to a stop, with 2 armed camps facing each other across the valleys of the narrow peninsula. To Canadians, this was a new kind of war and a new kind of army. Under United States Corps and Army commanders, they were part of a Commonwealth division, soldiering side by side with the British, the Australians, and the New Zealanders. Under General Castles, the Commonwealth Divisional Commander, the Canadians switched from Rocky's Army to Bogart's Brigade. A smoothly running composite army of United Nations was a reality. And as the peace talks dragged on with no settlement in sight, the Canadian Brigade dug in for the long, tiring, tedious grind of a static war. For security reasons and for their own safety, civilians are held back behind a line some 15 miles from the front. Beyond this runs the main supply route linking the Canadian lines with the rear supply bases. The trucks roll continuously, carrying the material of war to the men who use it up front across the engine. Here, just beyond the brigade's tactical headquarters, the RCR, Van Doos, and Princess Patricias keep a hot war going. Here, with their Commonwealth allies, live the 6,000 men who represent Canada in the fight against aggression.
We're not griping about it when the weather's half decent. Get used to watching the commie lines by the hour. We all do it, even the brig. When you're not on sentry, there's the weapons to clean up. Maybe you put a little more elbow grease into it if you're going on patrol. A clean gun doesn't crush you up when you need it. Anyway, if it's not weapons, it's whiskers. We've got a lot of homemade comforts to take the edge off. And in the early morning, you look across at the Chinese boys and figure they've got a lot more to grouse about than we have. our Artie doesn't give them much rest. All they've got to do is stick their nose out, and the boys on the 25-pounders take a punch at it. If you don't mind the walk, you can eat pretty good. American rations. Hot. Not the Ritz, maybe, but we aren't losing any weight. I guess the number one thing when you're stuck up here is mail. We get it 3 times a week. Believe me, that does something for a guy. And the other lugheads, if they've got an eye for beauty. Colvin's the generous type. He'll always read you the parts that aren't interesting. One thing about being up at the sharp end, you don't have to go on any route march for church parade. You've got to hand it to the Padres, Catholic or Protestant. They're right up there where a little praying can do a lot of good. A little way behind the lines are the rear echelons. Here you can get anything from a tailoring job to a hot shower. You could even get the Korean kids to wash down your Cadillac. A good job will cost you a couple of chocolate bars. If you're a smart foot slogger with a yen to take one of these dust buggies apart, you can get a course in mechanics, too. Over at Remy, they do all the heavy repair and salvage work. Keegan's a lucky stiff. I've been wanting to run one of those things since I was a kid. Ordnance have their field park just up the road from Remy. This is where the Service Corps guys bring their moans and groans for new tires. The engineers are tooling around all over the place. If they're not laying mines, they're blowing them up. As I told Bernsey, you can keep that job, brother. There's a couple of outfits that are never far behind the shooting. The field ambulance and the dental corps. Over here, where you have to dodge half a dozen diseases as well as the bullets, the medic's a guy you like to have around. And it doesn't matter what kind of a job you need, a new head or a set of falsies. Or just a rest. They're always around to fix you up. Speaking of rear area stuff, one B echelon went round the bend and built themselves a beer garden. Mother, I never left home. And for the teetotalers, there's the Imjin River. Some lucky jokers get down to the rest center at Incheon for a 48. That's the place where the Yank Marines made their attack. It's a pretty good go. Tablecloths and white china and a bit of music from the symphony orchestra. But what you really need to set you up is a leave in Tokyo. We get one every few months. There's Canadian Red Cross girls to take you on bus rides and show you the town. And when you get tired of improving your mind, you can find a few places on your own. At least Wild and Hatch always seemed able to. Hatch said he was making a study of Japanese national costumes. But sooner or later you come back to the sharp end, listening to the whine of the arty shells and the pop of the mortars. If you want to play Buck Rogers, you can go on a night patrol. We had one the other night that made quite a show. Somebody had seen sniper fire from some huts below the commie lines and sent the dope on it to brigade. Major Holmes' company of the RCR got the job of cleaning him up. It was Nobby Clark's platoon who got briefed to do the work, along with 5 pioneers. Not much to it. Just wander out through the minefields, hump a load of dynamite and gasoline across the paddies under the Chinaman's nose, and build a bonfire in his backyard. But you get used to it. You figure they haven't made the one with your number on it. Funny how everyone thinks that. Anyway, if it's planned right, you've got it half licked. Waiting for it to get dark is the worst. Those Chinese hills look as if they were painted white. They've been blasted so often. You can kill the last hour blackening up.
Lieutenant McLean? Bates? Clark? Green? Let's go. Yellow? Carter? Boston. Leaving Boston. Clear here. Bingo. Leaving Boston.
There she blows.
The arty, tanks, and mortars lay down a barrage that night to bring them out. Toddy after a dirty job like that. And when you pull it off without losing a man, you can really enjoy it.
From one dawn to the next, the men of the Canadian Brigade hold the line on the Samoshun. Outnumbered but not outfought, they are constantly on the alert for any new offensive which may roll towards them out of the hills. They would rather stop it here than have to stop it later, closer to home.